Hello, and welcome to the Netreo user group get-together for 2023. My name is Kyle Jackson, and I'm the Customer Support Manager for Stackify products here at Netreo. The Retrace tool is designed to provide you with insights into the performance of the applications and servers that you maintain, provide as a service, and leverage to empower your users. But what happens when Retrace breaks? And what are some of the best practices you can follow in Retrace that will help you prevent any potential issues? Retrace, like all other software available on the market, is not immune to bugs and to other issues that might limit or stop Retrace from reporting. In my session today, Maximizing Retrace APM, Common Issues and Best Practices, we will cover some of the common problems that Retrace users encounter and some general troubleshooting steps that we use to help resolve those issues, as well as some of the best practices that align with those issues that will hopefully help prevent some of those problems from occurring. Let's go ahead and get started. When we talk about the issues that Retrace users most often encounter, there are three main topics that come to mind. The first of those issues is a user's installed the Retrace agent on a new server in their account, and that server is not showing up in Retrace. That's to say, if we were looking at the monitoring and then servers page of Retrace, and we'd installed a new Windows agent onto a machine that wasn't already reporting to our account, afterward, we would expect to see it listed with the other servers that have Retrace agents installed on them, but it hasn't shown up yet. There are things that we can do to help resolve that issue that are very simple to try to get us corrected and back on course. Another common issue that we hear about a lot is I've got my server installed and I can see the server showing in my account, but I'm not seeing the application that I've configured on that server to begin reporting in Retrace. And there are steps we'll have to take to figure out why. And then finally, and what is probably the most popular support submission that the Retrace support team deals with, is a no APM issue. What we mean by that is a user has installed the Retrace agent on the server is showing in their account, they've configured an application to report to Retrace, and that application is also showing in the account, but the request metrics that you're seeing here, the satisfaction score, and other information isn't being populated for that application. And in that case, they have no APM reporting, and there are some other steps we're going to have to take a look at and evaluate so that we can determine what the issue might be. Now that we've discussed those top three most common issues that are reported to our support team, let's go ahead and take a look at them one by one and talk about how we can address those issues when we encounter them. So first, we'll start with, I've installed the Retrace agent on a new Windows server, but I'm not seeing that server reporting in my account. So to verify this, after I've installed the Retrace agent, it's on a Windows machine, it's using IIS, so I've restarted IIS to allow the installation to complete and allow the profiler to attach to my applications. Now I can verify all this information to see if that server is showing up in my account by simply selecting the monitoring navigational menu and then selecting the servers option. Here, I want to look for the name of that specific server, and I'm not seeing it. So that takes me on to how can I troubleshoot this? Where can I go for assistance? Well, you have some options. You can reach out to our support team with any troubleshooting issues or questions that you might have. You can do that in a couple ways, from the Help menu in your Retrace account, and then select Contact Support, or by emailing support@stackify.com and just include some information about the issue or the question that you have. Another way is by using our support documentation on our website, docs.stackify.com. Here, you can see the Stackify documentation website. To get to the documentation, we're simply going to click on the documentation link at the top of the screen, and that'll redirect us to where all the docs for the different topics and information can be found. In this case, I'm going to use the search feature to search for the troubleshooting installation doc that will give us more information about the specific steps we can take to troubleshoot why the agent isn't appearing in the account. The first item listed on this page is checking your API key to make sure it's not incorrect. We use a specific API key for every account in Retrace that's unique to each account. We use one API key for the entire account for all installations. So the API key will be consistent across any server that you install the agent on, or in any config where the API key is needed. Here, it'll list out steps for verifying the API key that was used during your installation. On a Windows machine, we simply navigate to C Program Files x86 Stackify and locate the stackify.ini file. Inside of that file, at the very bottom in the license section of the file, you'll see the API key that corresponds back to your specific Retrace account. Now, if I jump back to Retrace quickly, if you need a place to reference that API key, you can do so by selecting Settings and then Install Retrace. The activation for the account that we're viewing here is actually blurred out, but in your case, you would be able to see that activation clearly, and you would want to compare it to the activation key that's being listed in the stackify.ini file that you've opened. On a Linux machine, it's going to be similar steps. You're going to navigate to User Local Stackify, Stackify-Agent, and then open the Stackify-Agent.config file. Now, the second issue that could be at hand here, there's some sort of network restriction that's preventing the Retrace agent from connecting to the platform on our end. If your server's behind some strict network policies, your firewall could be blocking the agent from communicating with us, and in that case, we'll want to make sure we have exclusions or have whitelisted the proper domains and IP addresses so that everything can communicate correctly. In this case, we're simply going to come to the documentation site again, and we're going to view this specific doc, the firewall exclusions and IP address information. Adding exclusions and whitelisting this information is going to help ensure that we can continually get communication from the agent that's installed on your server to the different services that are being ran on our side. That includes the Retrace platform, s1stackify.com, the ingestion services, the API services, presence information, and then our storage locations. All of these things combined are what allows Retrace to take that data and send it to the appropriate locations so that we get the reporting uploaded and presented to you in your Retrace account as quickly and as accurately as possible. And then finally, when we're talking about a server that hasn't shown up, but we've already verified that the activation key is correct, and that all the network restrictions have been resolved using the firewall exclusions and IP addresses that are listed on that doc we were just viewing, the last question you'll want to ask is, are we connecting through a proxy server? Do we need to configure a proxy server if we are? And again, just like with the firewall exclusions information, all of that is available to you in the Retrace support documentation. And here we'll click on configuring HTTP proxies, and this again will give us a step-by-step guidance on how to configure this reverse proxy so that we're able to appropriately and correctly identify, register, and begin reporting the server where you've just installed that agent. In closing, when we're talking about some best practice approaches for installing new Retrace agents on new servers, there are a couple things that are good to keep in mind. First is going to be consistently configuring your firewall and IP address exclusions. Other best practice options that you can take is consistently installing the Retrace agent to the same drive on the different servers where you install. Another common issue that users experience in Retrace occurs after they've configured a new app to begin reporting to their account. Once the application's configured to appear, but does not show up in the Retrace account, there are a few things that we can check to help get that app reporting. The first thing you'll want to do for any app you've configured to appear in Retrace is ensure that there's traffic going to the endpoints of that application. Without traffic going to those endpoints, there is no data for the Retrace profiler to pick up and then upload that would get reported in your Retrace account. This is easily resolved by generating a small amount of traffic for 10 to 15 minutes to the endpoints of that application and then refreshing the Retrace dashboard. Now that we've talked about making sure there's traffic going to our app, let's look at the next possibility that could be preventing our application from appearing in the account. The next thing we'll want to look at is the configuration that was used to get reporting for that app in the first place. This is different depending upon the language or framework of the application. All I need to do in this case is return to the Stackify documentation site and then review the setup documentation for the language that I'm specifically using on the type of server where I'm trying to monitor the app. So if I return to my documentation site, on the left side of the screen, I have information for all sorts of things: .NET setup, Java, PHP, Node.js, Ruby, and Python. In this example, we're talking about a .NET app on a Windows server. So I'm going to drill into .NET Setup Guide, and then I'm going to go under APM Setup Guides and find .NET APM on Windows. .NET Setup is very, very simple. The first thing the documentation covers is installing the Windows agent on our server. We've already done that. The agent is installed. The server is appearing in our account. We're good there. The next thing is configuring the app itself. And to do this, we use the stackify.json file under the heading naming your app. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of configuration that's being done. And while it isn't, this file serves more purpose than just naming the application. In this case, we create a new file as part of our application. We name it Stackify with a capital S .json, and we're going to save that file in either the deployment folder of the application or in just the root of the application. Inside of that file, we're going to use the JSON format shown. We've got the curly braces, and within that, we've got an app name and an environment name setting. These are the names that Retrace will use to begin presenting your app within your account. The key here is making sure you don't have any formatting or spelling issues. After you've verified that the stackify.json has been added to your application and it's been saved in the deployment folder or the root of your application, go back to Retrace, and then on your server, we're going to want to open the Task Manager or the Services page, locate the Stackify monitoring service that's listed on the Windows services, and restart the Stackify monitoring service. Once the Stackify monitoring service restarts, we'll want to make sure that traffic's going to the app for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're going to come back to your Retrace UI. We're going to refresh the screen, and we're going to look to see if our app shows up in our web apps dashboard. At this point, if the app shows up, that's great. We've resolved the issue. We can wait for the reporting, the APM data that's being processed from the traffic that's going to your app to begin reporting inside of that application dashboard. Or if the app doesn't show up after 10 to 15 minutes, go ahead and submit a ticket again from the help menu or by emailing support@stackify.com. And again, just list out what's going on, what server, what app name, any relevant information you have that will help our support team dig into that issue, and we'll be happy to help you troubleshoot it and get that working. But again, most of the time, verifying that there's traffic going to the app and double checking the configuration that the app is using to report and retrace, most of the time those will knock out this issue and the reporting will show up. What are some best practices that can help you avoid this type of behavior from Retrace? Well, first off, again, is consistency. Using the same approach for every application of that type. So when we're talking .NET applications, making sure that we're saving the stackify.json to the same location for every app across every server. Whether you want to use the deployment folder of the application or simply the root of the application. Consistency is key. It makes identifying issues when they do come up much easier and much quicker. The second thing, best practice-wise approach for applications not reporting, or even when no APM is being reported for an app that is showing up in your dashboard, is traffic. Anytime you're outside of a production environment or an environment that you've stipulated where traffic is being generated to your application endpoints by end users, anytime you're outside of that, you'll want to keep in mind that without traffic, there's nothing for Retrace to report, and that raises the possibility that you won't see reporting at all. Now let's take a look at what is probably the most common issue we get reported to our support team, and that is no APM being reported for an app or several apps. This is a common issue, and there are steps we can take to resolve it. We'll take a look at those now. In the case of no APM being reported, what we will see is the server where we've installed the agent showing in the account, the application that we want to report to Retrace showing on the web app's dashboard. We just won't be gathering and reporting any APM metrics that you see in the application dashboard. Those are also shown here as the requests per minute and satisfaction score of each application listed. If I click into an application and view its application dashboard, and then I select the Performance APM tab, I can quickly see, just by looking at the graph, that the APM is stopped and has been stopped for a few hours. The first and easiest question you can ask in the event you're not seeing APM reporting is the application currently receiving traffic? And again, I know I sound like a broken record because the previous couple of issues also had this specific topic, but we see it quite often where traffic's not going to the endpoints of an app, and thus we're not getting any reporting. If you do have traffic going to the application and you're still not seeing APM, there are some other possible issues that could be preventing that reporting. The first and most common issue following a lack of traffic when you're using Windows is what we call a co-create error. Co-create errors are an error that occurs on Windows-based machines when more than one APM profiler has been installed on that machine. This is to say, if you had Retrace and another APM tool installed on the same server, that would create a co-create issue. This is due to a strict limit of one profiler per machine installation that Microsoft maintains. The way to resolve this issue is to uninstall both Retrace and the other APM tool, delete the install directories for both tools, restart IIS, and then reinstall Retrace, following all the normal procedures for install. Once this is done, that should clear up the conflicts created by the co-create error, and hopefully we'll see the APM start reporting. Another common issue that may impact APM reporting is a missing or incorrectly formatted stackify.json file within the .NET application. The stackify.json file that we discussed earlier may not work due to improper formatting within the file itself. Be sure to check this file, including the formatting and all the contents of it, to ensure you haven't made any spelling or grammatical mistakes that could be breaking the file and stopping the APM reporting from working. If all the items we've discussed have been checked and look correct, there are a couple more steps we can take before we move on to contacting support for further assistance. The first is to restart the Retrace agent that's running on your server where the application is being hosted. Restarting the Retrace agent is simple, and it only affects the Retrace agent itself. It will not touch your app pools or IIS and will not interrupt the application's availability. To restart the agent, you can do so from the Services or the Task Manager of a Windows machine by selecting the Services tab and then locate the Stackify monitoring service running on the machine. Right-click the monitoring service and restart it to restart the agent. Once the agent has restarted and you're ensuring that traffic is going to the app, give Retrace about 5 to 10 minutes and then check your dashboard again to see if the APM is returned. If that doesn't work, We can also look at restarting IIS. Now, in this case, you're going to want to schedule it because we will be interrupting the availability of your applications as part of that restart. And you can do this one of two ways. You can restart IIS from the IIS manager on your machine, or from the command line, you can run the IIS reset command. The IIS reset command is more of a complete stop and start of IIS than completing the restart from IIS manager, and it also allows all the hosting processes to completely shut down and end, and new hosting processes to start. This allows for a fresh load of environment variables to the hosting processes and can help ensure that APM begins reporting. If you've ensured your application has traffic, you don't have any other APM tools installed on your machine that could be causing a co-create error, you've checked the configuration of the stackify.json or any other file used to configure your application for APM and Retrace, and you've tried restarts of the agent and IIS in the case of a Windows machine, and you're still running into issues with APM reporting, please reach out to us on the support team and we'd be happy to help you. Again, you can submit a support ticket from the help menu in your Retrace account or via email by emailing support@stackify.com. When we talk about APM reporting and APM reporting that's stopped, and we consider the best practices that go along with that APM reporting, these best practices are directly related to the best practices we discussed just previously when we were talking about an application not appearing in Retrace. The key best practice when discussing an application reporting or APM reporting for an application is consistency with configuring your application for APM. Be sure that you're saving your config file to the same location in all apps, whether that's the root folder or in the deployment folder of your application. This makes things easier to find when troubleshooting is necessary. And again, always make sure you're testing with traffic, whether you're installing a new agent or configuring an app for APM. Testing with traffic will always help you confirm whether or not the reporting is really broken. That's going to do it for Maximizing Retrace APM, Common Issues and Best Practices. Thank you for taking the time to join us at NUGGET 2023. My name is Kyle Jackson, and thank you again.